No, that's why we always tell everybody, like, we want to make sure you're being successful with stuff, you know? So, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Don't sweat it.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you.
So I was just reading over her paperwork and seeing what brought you to training, and it looks like there's some resource guarding issues, barking, jumping, things like that. Anything you want to elaborate on or that you didn't list in your paperwork?
Well, it's mostly the resource guarding with like toys and like treats.
Okay.
And then the barking at night, especially since she's in a new environment, so like little like noises will like spark a bark from her. And then we do also have another puppy in the home, so she's kind of been like resource guarding against the puppy.
Okay.
Or, like, if the puppy gets like too close to her, and she's surprised, she'll like bark or like lounge at the puppy.
Okay.
So definitely want to correct that too.
Okay. So generally, like I was reading, is it more high value things that cause the resource guarding, like the bully sticks and things that she really likes?
Exactly, like her toys.
Sure.
Or like if she's like on the bed first, she'll resource guard her space too.
Okay. On the human bed or the dog bed?
The human bed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like the couch.
Okay. Perfect. And when she is resource guarding, is that like teeth? You said she shows her teeth, but she's never bitten anybody.
She's never bitten. She'll show her teeth. It'll get up to like a growl.
Okay.
And then like if she's like really surprised, she'll do a bark. But
Okay.
she hasn't bitten.
Okay. We're going to build on her skill every session. So we're going to go foundational today and see how she responds to new information, which we're going to be using a prong collar today to kind of guide her and set very foundational things. And then each week, our goal would be to build on her skill and improve upon those skills. So it's very simple training, and we are going to start to teach her new skills, but we're also going to work on stopping the behavior you don't want to see. So the resource guarding of things, and kind of have balance back in your relationship where she really understands that you're the leader and you're providing the resources that she is getting and how to have a better relationship with her. So today we're going to start off on prong collar, and we use a star marked plastic collar. And this is just designed to go around her neck, and we're going to guide her behavior with it. And it's kind of like the reins of a horse, so it's not meant to hurt her or go into her skin. It's providing even pressure, so we're just kind of giving her a pull and getting her to move with us and be guided and kind of communicate to her through the prong. The first thing I'm going to do is just walk around and get her kind of walking with me. I don't have a lot of expectation in the first couple moments here. I just want her to be able to start to turn with me and be able to create that distance from you. So the idea of the prong is that I want it to be only used when she's getting out of my space. So right here, I'm going to guide her back in, and when she takes a step back into the space, she's going to feel the release of the pressure. So when she is in the correct positioning, she feels no prong pressure. So as I'm walking here and she's a little behind, I'm using a little bit to get her moving with me and using my body to turn into it a lot. And then the next couple reps, I'd like to start to see her turn a little smoother. Right here as we're facing you seems to be her biggest trouble. Good girl. Good. Good. Good girl. Good. So So one thing I would consider almost immediately is revoking furniture access, because that should be a privilege that dogs get. And currently she doesn't sound like she is in the right mindset to be able to share furniture. And that is a big resource guarding challenge that we just have to work through. So until we can get her mindset a little bit better, I would consider kicking her off the bed and the couch. Just because it's going to create conflict at this point. I'm not saying she can never be on the bed or the couch, but starting to implement like her not being up there. And we do that through guiding her down. We could even leave the leash and the prong on her and drill it out. When she goes to get up, we tell her she has to get down. Good. Next, I'm just going to implement some sitting with her. So, although I'm sure she knows the word sit, I'm going to kind of do it non-verbally by putting a little bit of pressure up until her butt gets on the ground. Good. Okay. Good. Okay. Good. Okay. Good. Okay. And in our training, okay is our release word to indicate that she is allowed out of the position. So if I'm guiding her into the sit or I say something verbally, I want to make sure she is able to hold the position until we release. Okay? So we're adding a little bit of duration in. And we don't use a stay command in our training because it's a little redundant. I don't want her to think sit and get up whenever you'd like to. It's sit until you're told you're released. So we kind of just go with holding her accountable as she does get up and guiding her back into the sit at this stage. Okay? Next, I'm going to just get her to get on and off of the bed. Good. Okay. Good. So eventually our bed stay will be something that we teach her to go to her own bed, like a dog bed when we're at home and we're doing something, cooking, cleaning, whatever it may be, or just wanting her to relax. Eventually she will be able to go on her bed and hold the bed stay as long as we're holding her accountable. Okay? It's not used as a punishment, it's just used as a neutral space to kind of get her out of the way, calm down her mindset a bit, and give her a job to do. Good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as long as it's a dog bed. It can be any bed you'd like her to have. Good. Okay. So obviously we're in a pretty sterile environment here where there's not a lot of dogs and people, which is why she's able to pick up on these very basic things so well. Toward the end of our session, we'll go ahead and take it outside to mimic what your week will look like. But the walks will look a little different, and I'll show you how, I'll guide you how to do that. So we're gonna walk with a little bit more intention on our part. So all of our walks should follow the same level of consistency so we can start to build upon her skill. So just like what we're doing here when her butt passes us, we're kind of guiding her back into our space, setting those boundaries. And outside, that's going to be a little bit more challenging, especially with the issues you've described, like her getting excited when she sees dogs or people. So for temporary, right now, I would not allow people to say hi to her or other dogs, just because I don't want her to get in the habit of seeking value in strangers or other dogs. Her job right now needs to be reconnecting with you and learning what you want and what your rules and boundaries are. So even if she's really friendly, I'd kind of cut that out now, just as we're setting the tone for things. Perfect. Her engagement with you looks really good, which is the good news. I'm liking she's checking in with you way more than at the start of our session. So as you're home, I would like you to repeat a session like this. Walk around your living room, put the puppy away when you are working her, just so it's you and her time. And repeat like walking around, getting her into a sit, getting her on and off of her dog bed. And because she's so food motivated, I'd like you to use a lot of reward as well. And that will help really strengthen the positive behaviors we want. But I'm still going to use the prong to guide her and create a little bit of consequence when she does. And at this stage, the consequence is pretty light, but it needs to mean enough to her. So as we're guiding her back on the bed or guiding her back into sits, we're just being cognizant of our consistency with those things.
I'm pretty good with it. So just walking, pull her back if she's pulling.
Yes.
And then the thresholds. If she goes, I just go back and
Yeah.
okay is the magic word.
Yeah, so okay is releasing her from the expectation of being in the commands. And I would go into it, like I mentioned earlier, the walks will take a little bit more intention on our part. So when you go into walking her, I'd walk her without the other dog, obviously. And then spend the first 5 to 10 minutes, if you have a driveway, just getting her in around your house or apartment, parking lot, and starting to do some of that turning before we exit onto the main path that we go to. So we can kind of check the boxes slow and take baby steps. Okay. Is she able to listen with not a lot of distraction? And then as we're passing people and dogs on our walk and we start to see the planting, again, I just want you to keep the motion going. Even if she's giving you a little bit of a resistance, just keep going. Try to keep your space from other people at this stage. So we can always pull over and have her sit as people pass.
So she shouldn't be walking with the other puppy. She should just be walking.
Yeah, so intentionally, like if we're starting to be consistent with her, it's going to be very difficult to handle 2 dogs, especially if it's 1 person. And at this stage, we want her to be able to get down the basics before she starts to have really big distraction. And sometimes it can be more difficult to see, not to see the other dog doing things, but the other dog not having the same rules can be difficult for the people.
Right. Okay.
So intentionally just get her out for a couple of walks and repeat the same kind of things we were doing today. All right. Hey guys, it's Bridget with Miracle Canine Training, and I'm here to talk about the do's and don'ts of traveling with your dog. So the initial idea of taking your dog somewhere as you go on your trips this summer can be really fun, and I just wanted to give a couple tips and tricks to keep those travels safe. So first of all, I'll start with the do's. So I would definitely check reservations of the accommodation you're staying in, like your Airbnb, your hotel, etc., and ensure that it is dog friendly, and read the fine print, because recently I was about to book something, and in the fine print, not only did it have an extra charge for the dogs, but the instructions were that anytime I left the Airbnb, I would have to leave my dogs in a crate outside in the middle of the woods. And I was like, that's not happening. So be careful as you're booking things and making sure that they actually are dog friendly. Another thing that we run into a lot is if we feel like we have to take our dogs with us on our vacation, you can consider leaving your dog with a trusted friend or family member, boarding them, or finding in-home pet sitting. You do not need to feel obligated to bring your dog along. You can certainly find somebody to care for them so you can fully enjoy your vacation on your own. And I'd say sometimes traveling with dogs can be really fun if you're going somewhere with a lot of hiking trails, but also do some research of local coffee shops, breweries, etc., and ensure those places are dog friendly. Because if you're the only one in the group with a dog and you can't go anywhere because a lot of these places aren't actually dog friendly, it can be quite the hassle, and it can really put a damper on the trip if you're not able to experience the town or city that you're visiting. I would definitely say also do keep up on your training, and sometimes with changing locations or environments, we do have to find ourselves being a little bit more firm on our dogs where situations are arising, like we're staying at a new place that the dog's not familiar with, or we're going to that brewery or that coffee shop and bringing them along. I'd make sure the week prior to your vacation, you're really getting on your dog in your home, making sure you can check the boxes. Can they still hold their bed stay for a long period of time? Is their downstay still good? Is their responses to new situations? Are they still able to hone in and listen to you when things are going on around them that aren't really familiar or part of their everyday life? I would say if you are going to have somebody watch your dog, don't just let anybody watch your dog. So it works for some people, but I'm personally not a fan of the pet sitting apps because I feel like anybody can sign on to pet sit and we don't always know their credentials, what experience they have. I'd especially use caution if that sitter's offering boarding in their house. Do they have the licensing to care for dogs? Do they have the experience? Especially if your dog has some behavioral issues or some weird quirks that take a little bit higher of a skill level, I would definitely consider boarding your dog at a training facility or somewhere that can really handle the dog and their weird things that may come up. If your dog is a little bit more friendly and warms up to people, in-home pet care is a great option with a reputable company or somebody that has really good reviews. So my best advice is don't trust everybody and anybody. Be a little picky with your pet sitting process and who you are choosing to allow watch your pet, because it can be a little bit dicey at times. I would not rule out bringing your crate along with you, because if you are in your Airbnb or traveling with your dog, we want to make sure those crate skills are still really good and our dog is not screaming or trying to break out of the crate. I would not recommend leaving your dog loose in your Airbnb. Not only does sometimes that violate their rules or code of conduct, but I don't want my dog alone in a place that I'm not with them to supervise. Plus, if they destroy anything, you will be charged for it. So don't rule out your crate. Bring that along with you. It will make things a lot smoother. For longer trips, I would really also consider crating your dog in the car, especially if they're prone to some car anxiety. Your crate does come in handy in so many different scenarios as you're traveling to ensure your dog is kept safe, out of harm's way, and that we're giving them a safe spot to go and rest. Especially on those long drives, it can be really stressful if your dog is like panting or breathing down your ear, trying to climb in the driver's seat or the passenger seat, or climb in your lap with you. So as you are traveling this summer, I hope those tips help, and have fun with your dog and enjoy your summer plans. Don't forget to tag us in some of your travel plans so we can see what you're up to. Bye!
You ready? Look at this. Edgewater Park, off leash, like 7.5-month-old Corso, crushing it, distractions, just being a goddamn superstar, right? Just wait for the downstay. The downstay's fucking sweet. Look at all these people. She said, what people? She said, I don't pay attention to people. I pay attention to my people. Look at that. Beautiful. Oh. One thing we've been really trying to stress to people a lot lately is with our board and train programs, your dog is so capable of making really, really unbelievable strides. But it's gonna take some work from you. Though, and I think this is inevitable, right? We, stress to people so much. Board and trains aren't a quick fix. We're very transparent about it. Take some work once the dog gets home. There's going to be some adjustments, stuff like that. But still, I think just in the dog training climate we're in right now, I think that like they're just pushed as this like magic transformation, right? So I've been really trying to push to clients. Take advantage of your follow-up sessions, right? I know there's a lot of board and train programs out there that do like a send home and like maybe 2 follow-up classes or something like that, but I promise you that you, over the course of 2 weeks, are not going to become a magical dog handler. There's a reason why our one-on-one programs are 10 weeks long, right? There's a reason why our board and train program includes an entire year of follow-up classes, because you need to be able to take information, soak in some of that information that we give you, play with it for a little bit, and realize what works and what doesn't work, and then come back to us so we could continue fine-tuning, right? Nira is a really, really great example of that, of a dog that is now her 3rd follow-up session, I believe. And each one of those sessions we've done so far, there's been just a little tweak we had to make to take things to the next level, right? And then they worked with it for a little bit. Came back, little tweak to take things to the next level, right? Obviously things are starting to come together really phenomenally with that dog. But it's because of the hard work that the owner is putting in, and it's because they're taking advantage of those follow-up sessions. And if you're a trainer out there that's listening to this and you're struggling with getting good results with your clients post-board and train, or you're one of those trainers that we hear very regularly that's like, well, the owners aren't committed, they're not putting in the work, this and that, or you're seeing your dogs leave your training facility and then wind up with another trainer 3 months later or 2 years later or whatever it may be, really reevaluate your follow-up session structure that you're providing for people, and really try to be honest and ask yourself the question of, is this owner as educated as they need to be long-term successful with their dog? Okay, so really, really pushing that. And, what you're going to see in a minute here is we're on our way to a follow-up session right now with a dog that did a board and train with us, I believe sometime last year, right? And they sent me an email a couple days ago. They said, things are going great. We were having all this reactivity and this and that prior to doing the board and train. All of that has totally went away. But the other day, they ran into a new thing they've never seen with the dog before, right? So they gave the dog some sort of really high-value bone or resource or something along those lines. They, I think, went to go take it from her or something along those lines. And the dog started kind of hovering over it, growling a little bit. Started showing some resource guarding, right? New behavior came completely out of nowhere. Because we offer 1 year of follow-up sessions, totally free, included in the cost of the program, they were able to reach out to us the second they noticed a problem, and we're already on our way to the house right now to go address that problem, make sure we nip it in the butt so that it doesn't become a long-term issue. And again, getting back to the typical board and train follow-up support structure that I see a lot of people out there that offer, is in this situation, if they were to call back and say, hey, I'm having this problem again, that's more money. They have to pay for that, right? That's in our case, we charge $195 for a session for us to come out to the house and work with you, or just do a follow-up session if it needs to be at the home, obviously. I just think that's so. I just think that's so, I don't know if unethical is the right word or what, but I couldn't imagine somebody spending $4,300 on a training program for their dog. That's a shit ton of money for anybody. That's a shit ton of money, right? And then, somewhere down the line, I run into some sort of problem with my dog, and that trainer that I gave $4,300, in some cases over $5,000, depending on where you're going for your training program, and being like, yeah, I'm going to need some more money to help you with that. It just seems a little bit ridiculous to me, right? So in that exact situation, had they not had that follow-up session, what I see a lot of people do, because we are on the receiving end of this, is they go find another trainer, right? Hey, this training, I didn't get any support through this, right? They want to take more money from me. Maybe I'll try somebody else then at that point. And that's why we constantly get dogs that have been through training programs with other trainers who do a good job from a training standpoint. And then they come to us for the follow-up sessions because they're like, well, I mean, you know, you're not going to help me out with the dog unless I give you more money, so I'm going to try this new place instead, right? And we wind up retaining them as a long-term client for boarding, daycare, training services. They bring their next dog to us, and that is a quick, surefire way to lose business as a dog trainer out there. So these are the ways that I look at a lot of this kind of stuff and why we structure a lot of the follow-up support the way that we do. Is for one, obviously the success of the program, that's the most important thing, and then two, from a client retention standpoint, you want to do anything you can to keep these people in your network. So it's just my 2 cents on all this.
Hi, David. This is Phil Valet. It's Jason and Holly Smith's place with Bingo. She's doing really well. Just have a couple of questions for you when you have a minute. Appreciate a call. My number is...
Another example. I literally just got a voicemail 2 seconds ago from a client who did a board and train with us just, 3 months ago, something like that, maybe just over that. Sounds like she's doing very well, but he's got a couple quick questions on something. We are here to answer that. You don't have to pay me more for my time. If those questions require a follow-up session in order to fine-tune something, you don't have to pay for that extra time at that point because we are here to help you. Stupid lid. See, it says my iPhone is too hot. I can't use it.
Sure, that's Maple.
So excited. Look at that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and walk on in here. We'll talk a little bit about what we want to work on here today. So you said, obviously, you ran into a little bit of resource guarding with, what was it, a bone or something?
So I'll show you. It's this.
Oh, yeah, one of those guys.
Yeah, and so, I was just like,
Yeah.
but yeah, so she's always, no, you're okay. There we go.
The complaining.
So this is the bone.
Sure.
I was just letting her, I was taking it out
Yep.
of her mouth. She kind of was still gnawing on it, and I was just checking for flaking, and she growled, and I was like,
Sure.
she's for all intents and purposes, between me and my husband, she's my dog.
Okay.
I'm her
Sure.
person, and she's always been more attached to females than males. So, I was shocked because she's never turned on me ever, and she didn't turn on me.
Was it just like a growl, or
it was a
did it escalate past that? That was it?
It was a low growl. I know her different vocalizations, and that was a growl. So
Okay.
I was like, we can't be doing that.
And is this bone something she has regularly?
No, this was a new treat.
So this is the first time she had it?
Yeah, she's a really hard chewer, so
Yeah.
I have to find stuff that she can really last a while.
Have you given her bones like this before?
No, I usually, no, not really. This was a newer treat. We do the Himalayan, dog chews and, stuff stuff that lasts a while.
Yep.
But this is one that you actually have, I won't leave her with this.
Sure. Yeah,
because she can actually,
Yep.
take stuff off. So.
Okay.
Antlers, I'll do that. But
And have you ever seen any sort of resource guarding with her before?
never. She doesn't resource guard.
All right.
She really doesn't. She knows drop it very well.
Sure.
And she'll drop it and
Yep.
wait until
Yep.
I didn't do that this time.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, in a lot of cases, when we're dealing with resource guarding or we saw, a spat of it or something like that, it's generally a sign that, one, the dog is just getting a little bit too comfortable with those resources around us, right? Two, generally, the physically going and taking the things from the dog. It's not that it's a problem. I want to be able to do that, obviously, but I kind of have this unspoken expectation where let's say she was chewing on this thing over there, right? And I did need to go and take it from her. As I was going to take it from her, I would want her to actively disengage from that thing, regardless of if I say anything.
Right.
Right? So what we just need to do is just train for that picture a little bit. It should be really easy, especially if that's the first time you saw it.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a problem. Well, let's go ahead and why don't you just release her? You could let her hang out for a minute. We'll start with that.
Okay. Okay.
She's like, are you sure?
When we first got her and before the training,
one more second. I want to see her loosen up just a little bit more. See if she comes over to me. I know. Am I walking around in your house? Come here. Hello.
My brother has 2 shepherds, and he was like, this is not the way it's going to be. So she acclimated with my brother very quick because he's a little bit more like confident.
Yeah. So. I think a lot of times when you're dealing with a dog like her who, she's just a little bit of a nervous Nelly sometimes, a little bit sensitive and stuff. The absolute best thing you could do with them is just ignore them for a little bit, and just like be confident in ignoring them. I think where dogs like her tend to not like people trying to interact with them is when they try to overdo it and they try to over the top like be friends with the dog and stuff like that, where she just wants a couple minutes to just get used to the fact that somebody's there, and then once she kind of loosens up, everything's good. Yeah, what is this? What are you doing? So we'll give her one more minute, and then what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you try to give her that toy. We'll see if she shows any interest in it. We may or may not be able to recreate it with me here. A lot of times, with people and stuff like that, they're not quite as comfortable, But if not, I'll give you really clear instructions on how to address it, and you probably can set it up later, and it should be really no problem. So.
Okay. Do you think I need to go back to like hand feeding?
No. Hand feeding is kind of like a management technique while you're working through your problem, right? So like if hypothetically the dog had resource guarding over their food bowl or something like that, hand feeding kind of puts you in a position where she can't really rehearse it because we're not really giving you a bowl, right? But it doesn't really do a whole lot to solve anything necessarily, right? We do a lot of hand feeding protocols and stuff with the dogs while they're at the shop solely to use the food for working, you know what I mean? But outside of that, no, At this stage in the training, I use what I need to use, and I address the specific thing I need to address, right? So if the issue is with the bone, we're just going to address the bone, and we're not going to take some indirect route of solving it by like trying to do this, and this over here, What do you think? All right, why don't you go ahead and try to give her that bone, and we'll see what we get. Said, heck yeah. And you just let her do her thing. We'll let her kind of engage with that for a little bit, and then we'll work a couple of drills.
Can they develop like great space guarding?
Like confinement guarding kind of? Yeah, definitely. I mean, and all of it would be stemming from a place of her feeling uncomfortable or feeling like there's some sort of threat, right? So it's funny, you said, like we put her in the crate, we keep an eye on it, we try to like pat her and like do things like that, where your mentality behind doing that is let's try to make sure she gets used to this stuff so it doesn't become a problem. But it's actually ironic, this morning I think some other trainer posted a video talking about just the same thing, and I thought they explained it very well, where it's like, sometimes in an effort to prevent the dog from rehearsing some sort of behavioral issue, we could actually create the behavioral issue, right? And what I mean by that is, let's take the crate, right? You said, we're trying to just make sure that doesn't turn into a problem, and, she doesn't love it, but like she's tolerating it and stuff like that. If we're patterning in every time we put her in the crate that we're messing with her in ways that she doesn't like, especially in cases where we don't need to, right? That's going to keep her kind of on edge in that area. And then if she hits a point where she decides that day, enough is enough, I don't like this anymore, she might try to tell you that she doesn't like it then at that point, which is what creates the problem, right? So my best piece of advice for everybody in those situations is just act normal. Don't overthink it, right? Like when you need to put her in the crate, put her in the crate, right? And if in putting her in the crate, you ever run into a situation where you do need to like take a leash off her, take her collar off or something like that, and she does show some sort of unwanted behavior, we would just address that, right? But don't go out of your way to do stuff to like try to make it not happen. Just act normal. However you need to put her in the crate, just put her in the crate. When you need to get her out, just get her out, Let's go take a look. You have your remote on you?
Yeah.
I'll take the remote. Thank you. Actually, I'll have you guide. Is she in there? And just leave her be right there. So don't worry about messing with her or anything like that. Like I said, I don't have a problem if she takes it in the crate by any means, right?
Yeah.
So we'll just kind of hang out here for a second and we'll see what we get. Because that's the other side of it too, is like if she is uncomfortable chewing it around people, right? Which could be some of like, we'll see dogs will take the resource and like go elsewhere with it, right? Again, I'm not gonna like go and like pet her and like do all sorts of stuff like that and talk to her or anything like that. I'm just gonna hang out and act normal. Like if hypothetically you needed to do some office work, right, or something like that, just do it and let her do her thing, right? So we'll let her just get comfortable for a minute here before we go to do anything, obviously, and then like I said, we'll work making sure that she could disengage from that for us. So, but this is all fine so far, you know. Yeah, and the thing is not like don't test it, right? Because at this point, because we saw there was a problem, we need to test it a little bit, right? To make sure that problem goes away. But once we've rooted out the problem, we don't want to perpetually test it. You know what I mean? Or getting back to like with the crate, like petting in the crate, doing all sorts of stuff like that. It's like, if I don't need to do that, like there's no reason to do it and potentially put them in a situation where they're anxious or anything from it, you know? Like if we're constantly, every time she has a bone, like messing with her while she has a bone or trying to take it from her to test it, like that's going to, same deal, create a negative association of us being around her while she's engaging with those things, you know? So I try to just, again, just make it normal, right? We'll let her chew on this thing until it's time to take it. Once it's time to take it, I'll have my protocol of what it is that I'm going to do to take it, and we'll just enforce it that way. Yeah, it's just we have to ask ourselves, like, when we need to take something from her, this is how we do it, right? No different than anything else. Like routines and structure is just like so important for long-term success. Like, you know, guests coming over. When we have guests come over, this is how we do it, right? When we take resources, this is how we do it. When we feed, this is how we do it. We walk, this is how we do it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to practice outing her off of it, which is going to be asking her to disengage from it so that we can take it from her. So, and the biggest thing with it is when I give any sort of, use drop, you said?
I use drop it.
Drop it, okay. When I give any sort of command like that, I expect like immediate compliance of it, right? That's the biggest thing is sometimes we'll tell them drop it and they like think about it for a minute, right? And then they let it go. And they ultimately let it go, but it's still kind of on their terms, you know? Like with my dogs, like when I say drop it, or in my case I use out, like as I'm saying the word, they're like spitting the thing out, so. That's the kind of control you need around the resources to make sure you don't run into an issue like that. In a minute, what you're going to do is you're going to walk over to the crate. You're going to say drop it one time. And if right after you say drop it, she doesn't spit it out of her mouth, you're going to tell her no for that. And we're going to give a fairly high correction for that. And then after she drops it, if she goes back to it before we tell her she can go back to it, we're going to tell her no for that as well, right? So drop it is like all of our other commands where it's an implied stay, meaning that until you're released from the drop it, you're not allowed to re-engage with the toy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So whenever you want to do it, you can go ahead and give it a go.
Drop it.
That was actually pretty good. And then just hang out there for a second, and we'll give her a second. If she bites it again, tell her no.
No.
Perfect. Excellent. And then don't pet her or anything like that. These are just like appeasement behaviors right now she's showing. So now you can go ahead and grab the toy. And then as you're taking it out, if she bites it again, you're still going to tell her no. Awesome. Go ahead and tell her okay and give it back to her. Cool. And then just, we'll let her hang out there again. We'll actually leave her be for a minute. So that was perfect. So we got one correction in, obviously, for going back to it, right? I really test that side of things is once she releases it, making sure she's not just like randomly going right back to it, right? And then she was fine after that. So we'll give her a minute in there, let her kind of hang out, and then we'll try another repetition of that.
Like right before I emailed you guys, I was like, why am I not emailing you? But in that like 20 minutes where I was like, what the heck?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Googling everything.
Yeah, yeah.
They were like, don't like scold them.
Yeah, they're...
Like, I don't know, because it can
Sure.
tell them that their behavior, like, that warning growl isn't okay. You don't want them to like escalate.
Yeah. No.
Okay, I was like...
There's a million and one different things you're going to read on the internet, you know what I mean? And that is just a philosophical issue, right? Where they talk about, there's two sides of it, right? One is, well, you're going to correct the warning and it's going to go right into the bite, right? That one is not true solely because of the fact that the warning and the bite are the same thing, just on a different end of the spectrum, right? So aggression as a whole, like, you know, whatever you want to call it, right? Starts with growling, then maybe turns into teeth, then turns into lunging, then turns into biting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they're not two separate things. It's the overall state of mind the dog is in is just escalating. So by addressing it lower in the escalation, you're actually increasing the probability that you're going to suppress it faster, right? The other mentality of it is, well, we just don't use punishment and corrections for behavioral issues because you're going to create a negative association of you being around the dog kind of thing, or you being around them with resources, which, like we just talked about, the dog already has a negative association with you being around them in that case, because that's why they're rehearsing the behavior.
Right.
Right? If they didn't have a negative association with it, we wouldn't need to correct in the first place, right? So that's not true also, right? Like, obviously, we have to be able to tell our dog when they're doing something they don't like or we don't like, right? So, yeah, no, that's, you know, that's normal. I mean, like I said, you Google that kind of stuff, you'll find 7,000 different opinions on it, but, you know. No, this stuff is easier than you think, you know, and moving forward, I always tell everybody, like, long-term success, just, because you're going to notice over the next 4 years, different things are going to pop up, right? And you just got to simplify it and just ask yourself, is this something I don't want her to do? If it's something we don't want her to do, we just have to correct for it and inhibit it, right? Let's say, you know, 6 months from now, she starts getting into the trash can, right? Or whatever, or something like that, you know? A lot of people will call us and be like, oh my God, my dog started getting into the trash can. It's like, okay, like, set it up and correct it, right? Just don't let it become a problem, which is exactly what you didn't do, which is great, right? You emailed us right away and you said, hey, this new thing happened. It's the first and only time she's ever done it. I want to nip this in the bud, right? So if you notice a new thing, same exact concept, right? You got to set up the situation, which is exactly what we're doing right now, put us in a position to actually reinforce the behavior and do away with it. So, all right, let's go ahead and walk back in there and see if she still got it or not.
Drop it.
Perfect. Then give her a second and just kind of wait there for a minute. Make sure she doesn't go back for it. Whenever you feel like she's committed to not going for it, you could go ahead and grab the bone, and we'll make sure we don't see any problems there. Perfect. And then whenever you want, if you want to give it back to her, you're more than welcome to. If you want to put it away, it's up to you. Cool.
So no, yeah, it's not.
No problem.
It's not the issue that I saw.
Well, it's not the issue you saw because we already addressed it, right? We got her into a compliant state of mind around the resource around you, right? So that's the biggest thing, is that routine when you're going and taking resources from her will put you in a position where when you need to just take it, she's going to be in a focused, compliant state, right? So start maybe once a day, give her that toy, you know, let her do her thing with it, and whenever you want to end the session, work that drop, be very strict about the expectation with it. I would go no lower than a 50 for your correction if she does try to go back for that toy, and then you take it from her, and you shouldn't have any issues with it. If it's a resource that she has that we want to be able to take from her, we would use that protocol for it. Now, let's say she picked something up she wasn't supposed, let's say she picked up this slipper right here or something, right? That I wouldn't do that with. I would just correct her for picking up the slipper, right? So we use drop it for things the dog is sometimes allowed to have. So toys, you're allowed to have it sometimes. So I'm giving you kind of that freebie to release it for me, right? Something she's never allowed to have, we just correct for as opposed to do that. Because if we use a drop it in that context, we're telling her you could have it until I tell you drop it, which isn't what we want, right?
How much do we owe you for this?
You good. It's included with the board game.
Really?
Yeah, you have the year follow-up sessions.
That's what a follow-up session is?
Yeah.
I thought it was like a phone call.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, and Jacob was like, okay, well,
No.
to correct it, so whatever.
No. Yeah. No, that's why we always tell everybody, like, we want to make sure you're being successful with stuff, you know? So, yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
don't sweat it.
Thank you so much.
No
Love you
problem.
guys down. Thank you.
Hello, dog.
No,
Perfect.
no jumping dog.
Hello. Hi. Hello. So excited to see you again. So what's going on?
Not much. We just got off work. I fed her, so at some point she
Sure.
Can you take her out to use the restroom?
Yep.
I had a friend this weekend, and her beds weren't as good just because, like,
Sure.
there was like more people around and distractions. I did try to correct her a couple times, and
Sure.
she would listen then, but occasionally,
Sure.
she would get up before getting permission.
Well, let's go ahead and start with, why don't you go ahead and put her on the bed. Let's see how she does.
Puppy, bed. Bed. Puppy, bed.
Go ahead and give another correction for that.
Puppy, bed.
Excellent. Cool. And then we're just going to have her hold that for a minute.
Okay.
You are wound up, girl.
She's really excited because I just got
Yeah.
back from work. So I think that's why.
That's okay. So a lot of times I try to practice when they're in this state of mind. You know what I mean? So like if you notice there's certain times, like right when you get home or whatever, where she's like extra amped up, we want to make sure those are the times we're really reeling it in, you know? So, and you know, even though she kind of squeaked a couple times there, I mean, with as amped up as she is, like you really need to make sure that's as motivating as possible. So, cool. So we'll let her hold that for a minute or so. And then what we'll do is we'll release her off and we'll just practice putting her on a couple times. And you said that she'll get on the bed. It's just the holding it, like for longer periods, she'll sometimes have a little bit of an issue with.
Yeah.
And do you notice there's like a certain amount of time that's like really the cutoff with it?
Not with the, so when it's with us, like she'll hold it as long as I like will put her in. So usually that's at like 10 minutes at most, like while I'm like cooking. But it's the worst when like other people are around and moving around and talking, where she will like cry on the bed for a little bit, and then like all of a sudden I turn around and she's off, and I miss the chance to correct it because like my back was turned.
Well, to that point, so you've never really missed the chance to correct it. So let's say hypothetically, because we actually just ran into this with a different dog. We were just at their house right before this. Let's say you like were outside for something and she was on a bed stay, right? And you were out there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, and you came back in and she was no longer on the bed. And we don't know when she broke it, but she's no longer on the bed and we left her and she was on the bed. You could still correct and then go put her back, even though you didn't see her walk off. Because no matter how long after the fact it's been, if she's not on the bed, she's actively doing the wrong thing still, right? So even if it's 5 minutes after the fact, she's still breaking the command, essentially. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I was just worried that like she wouldn't know what it was for, because like it like had passed. But yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that'll help you a lot if you're running into a lot of situations like that where she's breaking it after the fact and we're like, ah, crap, like there's nothing we could do about it, you know? Making that one adjustment of still correcting for it and then putting her back on, you'll see it really get much, much better then from that point. So this looks pretty good though. So why don't you go ahead and release her off?
Okay, puppy, come here. Good girl.
And we'll let her hang out for a minute, and then we're going to practice just putting her on a handful of times. Poppy, come here. And I'll kind of just, you know, get her a little excited and make it real hard for you. Did you get groomed recently, Poppy?
Yeah, she did.
Look at you. All right. Why don't you go ahead and put her on the bed again here?
Okay, puppy. Bed.
Beautiful. You see how much faster that one was, obviously. So we'll give her a minute there, and we're going to practice that a couple more times. This next one I'm going to make even harder for her, so I'm going to pet her, and I'm not going to stop petting her. I want to see her disengage from me and still get onto that bed. Because inevitably you're going to run into situations where you have a guest come over, that's going to be kind of not helping you a whole lot as far as being a distraction. So.
Yeah, actually yesterday I took her to the solstice steps.
Oh yeah.
And there were like a lot of, I mean obviously there was like other people. And she was holding her stays or down was pretty good. But like from time to time she would just like, I didn't give her permission and she would get up again too. But like I know it's just because there's so much like stimulation around.
You're going to see mistakes here and there, you know what I mean? The important thing is not, does she not make the mistakes anymore? Like obviously we don't want her to make the mistakes, but the important thing is when she does make the mistakes, you know, can we correct it and get her back in and get her to be successful ultimately? And as long as we can, that's normal, you know, especially if you haven't taken her there before or it's been a while since you've taken her there. You know, she should be a little bit antsy initially, so.
Okay, Poppy. Good girl. Good girl.
Poppy. All right. So like I said, whenever you want, you're going to go ahead and call her away from me onto the bed.
Puppy, bed.
Wow.
So, like I know it's technically supposed to be all four. I don't know if you would.
Good question. Yeah.
consider that.
So when it comes to like plush beds and stuff, my criteria is if her elbows are on it.
Okay, gotcha.
Right? Because like a lot of dogs will try to like hang their paws off, which I don't have a problem with that. What I don't want is when they start army crawling and then like suddenly half their body is off. So the elbows is my criteria that I hold it to. So I have no problem with that. If she were standing, the criteria would be paws on, obviously. But if she's in that down position, that's fine. So we'll give her a second and we'll do that one more time. But this looks pretty darn good. Is there anything else in the house that you're having any sort of issues with?
Honestly, she's been really good inside.
Good.
It's just like sometimes when people are sitting on the couch, like she'll get up in all of their faces, but like I don't know how to like.
Sure.
Because I don't want her to not approach people.
Sure.
But then I also don't want them like her also
Yeah,
like, just
all over them and
all
stuff.
over them. But
Yeah.
I guess in that situation, I should probably put her in a bed.
Not necessarily,
Or-
right? So let's look at jumping, right?
Uh-huh.
Jumping, we correct for, and that doesn't create a bad association with people. She knows she just can't jump, right?
Yeah.
We look at it sometimes differently when we're on a couch, even though it's the same thing, right? So the rule is, when you look at jumping, is paws can't go on people, right? So I don't care if she goes up on the couch. I've got no problem with that at all. But the second the paws go on people, it's the same thing as jumping, in her mind at least, right?
Oh, okay.
So like if you're sitting there and you have a guest over and they're sitting down and she goes and paws on the leg, then paws on the chest, stuff like that, boom, correction, just like I would for jumping. And what that'll teach her is that she can get up on the furniture and she could like lay next to them or sit next to them or anything like that, but she's still not allowed to actively get on them.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
easy fix as well. So, all right, why don't you go ahead and release her again? We'll do one more of those.
Okay. Good girl. So good.
So this next repetition, what I want you to do is your last two, you really gave a lot of help. You were like down here, which isn't the end of the world, obviously. But I want to make sure she's listening to your verbal command, right? So you can walk over to it and just tell her bed, but don't give that help.
Puppy bed. Good.
Much better. And you see how we're just holding her to a higher standard. Doesn't matter if somebody's petting you and like really getting you excited and stuff. You still got to stay focused on you. Oh, great. So the only adjustment that I would make is higher level for the jumping still, and then hold her to a higher standard with that bed stay.
Okay.
Right, a little quicker in correction for it. And you know, when she does break it, if it's after the fact, you can still correct and then go put her on.
Okay.
So, do you do a lot of like out of sight bed stay stuff?
I'm out of her sight. No, I don't think I usually do that. Like,
Do you think
I
she'd
don't
hold
have
that
it,
if we walked into the hallway?
No, I don't
That's all right.
To do it maybe right now because
Yeah.
like she knows we're actually
In like a training
in a
mode.
training situation, so she might. So I don't
Let's
know.
try it.
We should try.
Yeah, let's try it. You know, it's not like you have to do those types of things all the time by any means, right?
Yeah.
But it's good to practice different pictures every now and then and challenge her a little bit with it. I don't hear the whimpering yet.
Maybe she knows we'll come back in.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. She's fun. Very special.
That's for sure. All right, let's go back in here. Much better. All right, you can release her off.
Okay, puppy, it's okay. Come here, good girl. Please.
No, that looked
Yeah.
a couple easy adjustments there. That looks good though.
Yeah.
So awesome. Let's go ahead and take her outside. We'll do a little bit of walking and stuff with her. We'll take her around the corner of that park. Yeah.
They get really distracted by other dogs.
Sure. Yeah, and the whole reason why she's being so good with it right now is solely the fact that we got on her over some stuff inside, you know? Everything starts in the house before you go out on your walk. You got to set the tone in there, you know, with whatever it is you're asking her to do. And as long as you do that, everywhere else should be really easy. So why don't you go ahead and put her in a downstay right over in the shade right here. And we're just going to sit here for a minute. Give her a second. There we go. And just enforce that downstay with her for a minute. So a lot of times coming somewhere like a patio or something where you're just going to see a lot of stuff going on could be very productive for the dog's training. Yeah. Just teaching them to kind of like tune out and ignore some of those distractions and stuff. So it's pretty good. So we'll kind of hang out here until we see her settle just a little bit more into it and not seem so antsy. Yeah. And then we'll move on.
I do like being able to take her out to
yeah.
parks where we can go hike. Like that's like the
yeah.
ideal.
Oh, hell yeah.
To take her out on hikes and stuff too.
That's what you get a dog for, is to do those kinds of things. It's not like you got to go out of your way to do them by any means, but making sure that you're in a position to like practice like those pictures you would need every now and then, you know, like downstays at patios. Like I don't ever, like if I'm going to go sit down for lunch somewhere and bring one of my dogs, I don't ever have them just like loose wandering around. It's they're holding a long downstay the whole time, you know? So I'm just getting them used to just people walking by, servers approaching, you know, other people having dinner, stuff like that. Very good. Cool. Let's go ahead and keep cruising. Crushing it, Poppy. Gotta lead the way. So predictable. So we'll give her a couple minutes here, let her kind of hang out, do her thing, and we'll add a couple commands back in, work a couple recalls, a couple downstays. Honestly, like you can't really ask for much better than all of that. You know, even, you know, some mistakes here and there. Like I said, she's gonna break the bed stay from time to time, you know. She's gonna try to, you know, jump from time to time. As long as you're consistent about correcting it every time she does it, and you're being nice and high enough with your e-collar, you really shouldn't run into any sort of issues with her, you know? So the biggest thing I always tell everybody in this position, which is like, you know, long-term success of this kind of stuff, is just focus on the things that matter. You know what I mean? Like, make good routines you could stick to long term. Like when you take her for a walk, just every time you take her for a walk, do it this way. You know, don't slip up and, you know, like 6 months from now when she's doing really good, be like, she doesn't need the e-collar for this walk, or maybe I'll let her start sniffing a little more on the walk or anything. Like what you're doing right now is working, so just keep doing it, right? Yeah. And then give her those bursts of freedom where she can go run around and hang out and have a good time and stuff. But when you're walking, do it that way, right? The level, right? The high level, like I think we talked about this last time we met, which is, you know, now that she's doing good, don't bring it down because then she'll start slipping again with it, right? The high level right now is the reason why she's doing good, so keep it at that, right? With the guests coming over, right? Try to make sure you're doing the bed stay every time a little bit, stuff like that. As long as you do that, you really shouldn't run into any sort of long-term problems with anything, you know? But I think she looks fantastic. Your handling looks pretty darn good, I would say, you know? So you just gotta kind of keep it up. Poppy, you did so good. We'll see you soon.